Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, President Trump promising America will never fall to communism. He made the comments right before Independence Day.
America is never going to be communist in any way, shape, form.
Air shipments from Asia tumble. The U.S. recently canceled its tax-free exemption for low-value packages from China. In an exclusive interview with the Epoch Times, Trump explains America's economic edge over China.
China's a, $24 trillion economy. We're at, almost 30. The difference to China is they've got 5 times the amount of people. So our productivity is not only greater, but it's greater in terms of a productivity per person. It's like 5x in America.
A comic book prediction is hurting Japan's tourism industry. Some airlines have even canceled flights because of a sharp drop in passenger numbers. A year-long celebration of America's 250th birthday is underway. The anniversary falls on July 4th, 2026. President Trump kicked off these celebrations in Iowa on Thursday. He honored American ideals and pushed back against the threat of communism.
I'm proclaiming here and now that America is never going to be communist in any way, shape, form, and that includes New York City.
After the rally, Trump returned to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where he talked about the upcoming tariff deadline.
So we're going to start sending letters out to various countries starting tomorrow. We've done the final form, and it's basically going to explain what the countries are going to be paying in tariffs.
Trade agreements have already been reached with India, China, the UK, and Vietnam. The Vietnam deal has angered the Chinese Communist Party. The U.S. is imposing a 40% tax on goods transshipped through Vietnam. That means it will be more expensive for countries like China to ship their products through Vietnam. Chinese companies do this to avoid high U.S. tariffs on Chinese products, and it will be harder for Made in China products to change their labels to Made in Vietnam before they're shipped to America. It remains to be seen what the agreements with other southeastern countries will look like regarding Made in China products. The number of air cargo shipments arriving in America from Asia has tumbled over the past 2 months. We're talking double-digit drops. Back in May, the U.S. canceled a tax-free exemption for low-value packages from China.
The end of America's de minimis tax loophole for low-cost packages is roiling the global air cargo business. That provision had allowed packages valued at under $800 to enter tax-free. It drove the rapid rise of online retailers like Shein and Temu. But Donald Trump then moved to close the loophole in May. Now figures from the International Air Transport Association show air cargo demand from Asia to the US dropped 10.7% that month. Experts say the volume of low-value e-commerce shipments saw a particularly steep fall. They were down 43% on the month, according to industry consultancy Avian. By contrast, it says demand was up in May for shipments to other markets, including Europe and Southeast Asia, which are unaffected by turmoil over US trade policies. After the end of de minimis, packages from China to the US were initially taxed at up to 145%, though the rate later fell back to as low as 30% after Beijing and Washington struck a deal to ease tensions. Now Avian says it's very unclear whether demand will bounce back with tariffs at that level, still a hefty increase on the zero-duty regime that used to prevail. The consultancy says low-value shipments had been taking up a growing share of air cargo demand between China and the US. It estimates they accounted for more than half of such air freight last year, up from just 5% in 2018. Last month, shares in FedEx took a hit after it declined to give an outlook for the full year, citing uncertainty over US trade policies. The company has been a major player in moving parcels for Temu and Shein.
A comic book doomsday prediction shakes Japan's tourism industry. Rumors of a major earthquake set to hit July 5th have spooked travelers. So much so that some airlines have canceled flights from Hong Kong to Japan due to a sharp drop in passenger numbers.
Japan has seen a tourism boom in recent years, but a viral rumor about a disaster coming this Saturday is having a real effect on arrivals. Japan set an all-time monthly record of 3.9 million visitors in April, but in May, arrivals from Hong Kong, the superstitious Chinese-controlled city where the rumors have gained particular traction, fell by 11% year-on-year. The rumors stem from a Japanese manga called The Future I Saw by artist Ryo Tatsuki. Some believe it predicts a catastrophic earthquake in Japan on July 5th. Steve Huon of Hong Kong-based EGL Tours has seen sales slump and has tried cutting prices for tour packages and even offered earthquake insurance.
The
rumors have had a significant impact, cutting our Japan-related business by about 50%. However, the demand for other destinations, such as mainland China and Southeast Asia, has grown.
Hong Kong resident Brendan Choi said he was a frequent traveler to Japan, but he was hesitant to visit for now.
I think for me the most important thing about travelling is safety. Hearing this prediction, I would also try my best to avoid going to Japan during July and August. If possible, I might delay my trip and go after September.
Ryo Tatsuki, the comic book's creator, has denied being a prophet and denied the rumors about July 5th, saying her work has been misinterpreted. The first edition of her book did warn of a major natural disaster in March 2011, the month and year of the Fukushima earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident. Now, social media rumors interpret that a new edition of the book predicts a massive earthquake on July 5th. Japan does sit on the Pacific Ring of Fire and is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world. But Robert Geller, who has studied seismology for over 50 years, says even scientific prediction of earthquakes is impossible.
Famous astronomer Carl Sagan, he once said that extraordinary claims should require extraordinary evidence. But these predictors are making extraordinary claims with the flimsiest of flimsy evidence. Basically none at all.
Meanwhile, at the Tokyo landmark of Asakusa, the scene was like any other day. Flocks of tourists streaming through its gates to browse stalls and see the shrine. But some Reuters spoke to still had the rumors on their minds, even those from beyond Hong Kong. Seattle visitor Serena Peng had initially tried to talk her husband out of their trip.
I first heard about it from my wife, and then I watched some YouTube videos and did some research. She was very concerned.
If it happens, it happens. So I'm not super worried about right now, but I was before.
It's been 5 years since China imposed the national security law on Hong Kong, silencing public dissent except voices loyal to Beijing. But the fear many Hong Kongers live with now goes beyond arrests and jail time for activist activities. It's the chilling uncertainty creeping into everyday life. Here's the story.
They are afraid of the unknown, that what they have now, the certainty in their life, would be taken very easy in a very short period.
They've seen pro-democracy activists hauled into court and jailed. Now that pressure is seeping into their daily lives. Small businesses in Hong Kong, bookstores, cafes, and even street vendors are facing growing scrutiny through inspections, anonymous complaints, and vague rules. Even wearing a t-shirt with a band slogan or scribbling a protest message on a bus seat could land someone in jail.
Hong Kong has a big change. As you can see, civil society has been reduced so much. There are red lines everywhere.
On Sunday, the League of Social Democrats, Hong Kong's last pro-democracy party, announced its disbanding after 19 years. That leaves the Beijing-ruled city with no formal pro-democracy group.
And we need to consider a lot of reasons, including especially for our Congress, our friends, the consequence for them. So we choose to disbandment.
Many of their members have been jailed for so-called civil disobedience, as acts of protest are now often labeled unlawful. Among them is 69-year-old Liang Kwakeng, still behind bars. To date, more than 320 people have been arrested under the national security law in Hong Kong. One of the most prominent cases is media tycoon Jimmy Lai. His imprisonment has drawn global attention.
President Trump himself has mentioned Jimmy Lai
several times now, and he is very concerned about the fate of Mr. Lai. But I just emphasize that U.S. government concern is not just on this one individual. There are many other people, unfortunately, in Hong Kong who are in jail for peaceful expression of political views.
People leaving Hong Kong to escape Beijing's growing control now share the same feeling. The buffer between the city and the mainland is gone. That is, the special rights, freedoms, and autonomy Hong Kong was promised after the 1997 handover from British to Chinese rule has disappeared. Critics say Beijing is tearing down that promise.
Coming up, still to come, in an exclusive interview with the Epoch Times, President Trump's son Eric Trump explains America's economic edge over China.
China's a, $24 trillion economy. We're at, almost 30. The difference to China is they've got 5 times the amount of people. So our productivity is not only greater, but it's greater in terms of a productivity per person. It's like 5x in America.
Security experts say Britain is not taking the threat posed by Chinese spies seriously enough. It's not only a risk for the UK, but also for Britain's allies. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump's son Eric Trump is sharing his take on America's economic edge. In an exclusive interview with the Epoch Times, American Thought Leaders host Jan Jekielek spoke with Eric Trump about what makes the U.S. economy stand out against communist China. Let's take a look.
Eric Trump, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
It's great to be here.
I just recently visited a small business, about a $30 million manufacturing facility, sort of in the heart of Amish country in Ohio, where the gentleman, John Miller, he basically was told at the time when everybody was shifting to China, he was told, you're going to be in China and you better be in China. We're not going to be buying from you anymore.
Yeah.
What he decided to do is innovate and invest in his company. He kept the company in, and now he actually exports to Mexico. So it's completely doable. And I'm curious what you think. You mentioned, of course, the big business, Ford, one of the massive American mainstay companies. But what about the small business like John Miller's?
Well, I think we can do that better than anybody as well. America was founded in a really interesting time, and back to Ford, I know it's a completely separate conversation, but, when Ford created the Model T, it gave people this kind of renewed spirit, right? If you go over to Europe, if you go to the UK, everybody hopped on a train at 9 o'clock in the morning, and everybody would get on that train. They'd go from point A to point B. It created very monolithic thought. As American Industrial Revolution was really around a car. If you wanted to go to New York City because you were into jazz, you could do that. If you wanted to go to Adirondacks because you were into the outdoors, you could do that. If you wanted to head west to California, cross 66, you could do that. And it created just different thinking, right? People approach problems in a different way. It created the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, and we make products better than anyone. And I don't care what anybody says about China, right? China's a, $24 trillion economy. We're at, almost 30. The difference to China is they've got 5 times the amount of people. So our productivity is not only greater, but it's greater in terms of a productivity per person. It's like 5x in America. We do it better than anybody in the world. We've got the best system. We've got the best country. We're the best innovators. I mean, we're shooting rockets into outer space. We're catching them with chopsticks right now. I mean, we lead the way in terms of everything we do. And that's a beautiful thing. We can never, ever let it go. And that's why government needs to set great policy that allows the best entrepreneurs in the world to create the greatest companies. And then it's got to get the hell out of the way. It's got to keep us at a great competitive advantage. And so long as you do that, allow capitalism to reign. That's the advantage that none of these other countries in the world has. Allow capitalism to reign, and America will always win. We will always win if we allow them to do that.
I've had Mike Rowe on the show a number of times. I've been on his show as well. And one of the problems that he sees that he's trying to solve with his foundation is this, basically skilled worker shortage. And it's kind of dramatic in America. There's so many of these skilled jobs that are out there that there simply aren't enough people to staff. Have you thought about this? Like, what is it that we can do to actually shift that?
Well, it's actually deeply personal to me. I was on construction jobs at the age of 11, making minimum wages, working for stonemasons, working for electricians, plumbers. I spent an entire summer cutting rebar with an acetylene torch. I can run any backhoe, any excavator. I spent every summer of my life doing that. I can wire a house like it's nothing. I have calluses on my hands that prove it. I mean, my father really believed in, putting us to work at a young age, making us truly understand what real estate is. And, that's bricks, that's mortar, that's concrete, that's electrical, that's plumbing, that's HVAC. And I can do all of those things extremely well. In fact, it's still kind of a hobby of mine today. I laugh at friends who literally, and these are incredibly competent people. These are people that work on Wall Street, do very nicely for themselves. They can't hang a picture on a freaking wall. I mean, it's embarrassing. Hey, it's something broke in their house. Give me your tools. Like they might have a screwdriver in a drawer, and you just, it makes you laugh. And it's incredibly sad though. I mean, we've lost the skills. I mean, we need manufacturing. We need skilled labor. And that's why you see so many people coming at us, they don't even necessarily they don't go to college in so many cases. They go out, they create these great electrical companies, they create these great plumbing companies, they go get licensed, and all of a sudden they build them into massive enterprises. Because, so many people are trying to run toward the Ivy League degree when there are so many jobs out there, man. Look at some of these diving jobs, this saturation diving. Look at so many of these, these welding jobs, I mean, some of these jobs are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I mean, incredible careers. And yet, people largely ignore them in this country. And what Mike Rowe is doing is absolutely phenomenal. He's prioritizing the trade schools again. I mean, we need to be able to build. We need to be able to manufacture. We need to be able to create. But you better understand electrical engineering if you're going to do that. You better understand metallurgy if you're going to do that. You better understand kind of all these complicated things. And there is no person in the country who's a bigger fan of Mike Rowe and what he's accomplished than I am, because those skill sets are fading away, and that's going to be a horrible day for this country.
You're trying to create an institution based on crypto, a financial institution, using crypto at its core. There's been a lot of initiatives out of your father's White House around crypto. I mean, there's a strategic Bitcoin reserve, this digital asset stockpile. There's been a working group. There's been the sort of promotion of stable coins and so forth. So, some people are saying, hey, this is, looks like the Trump boys might be trying to leverage this somehow. Well, how do you respond to that kind of criticism?
I respond very, very simply. I mean, my father's always loved crypto. We've always loved crypto. We started World Liberty Financial when we were sitting in a courtroom when we had a 0% chance of winning, according to the mainstream media. Isn't it really interesting? I mean, my father wants to do the things that are best for this country, all right? And we have to win the digital revolution, because if we don't, believe me, China is running at it as fast, maybe faster than even we are. So we're going to get totally left behind. But no, these projects were started pre-politics. When the New York Times said we had zero chance of winning, because we truly believe in the future of finance. And, you've got to break the antiquated system.
Well, Eric Trump, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
Thanks so much, Jan.
Security experts warn Britain is not putting Chinese agents and potential spies under enough scrutiny. This, they say, creates risks not only for the UK's national security, but also for Britain's allies, such as the United States. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this story.
Britain this week began its Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, a plan designed to monitor foreign agents carrying out political influence activities in the UK. But unlike Russia and Iran, China has not been put under the scrutiny of the programme's enhanced tier, meaning British police and intelligence services have a reduced ability to monitor Chinese agents and potential spies.
The fact that China, under the CCP, engage in an entire all-of-government, all-of-society approach for its CCP operations abroad, this completely renders pretty meaningless and useless the scheme for trying to deter and safeguard our interests against China.
In 2023, the Intelligence and Security Committee said China has successfully penetrated, quote, every sector of the UK's economy. Later that year, the UK's Domestic Security Service, MI5, said Chinese spies had covertly approached more than 20,000 people in the UK. Alleged Chinese spies have even cultivated relationships with members of the British royal family. Documents seen in court allege Yang Tengbo worked for the United Front Work Department, an arm of the CCP responsible for foreign influence operations. Yang developed close ties to Prince Andrew and acted on his behalf with investors in China, despite warnings to the prince from British intelligence. Yet despite these threats and warnings, the UK government did not put China on the enhanced tier.
We have this complete separation of reality within the government in its China approach. And ultimately, the reason to do with that is entirely down to the economic interests which this government are completely convinced that China will solve.
Founder, CEO and chairman of State Armor, Michael Lucci, says the purpose of the Foreign Influence Programme has been undermined.
I mean, unfortunately, what this looks like is that the UK, and particularly this government, is so penetrated by Chinese influence that they don't want screening of Chinese influence.
But it's not a problem that only affects the UK. It has ramifications for Britain's allies too.
China has imposed a tariff of up to almost 35% on brandy from the European Union. It goes into effect over the weekend. The European Union is reacting.
The EU regrets China's decision to impose definitive anti-dumping measures on imports of EU brandy to China. We have been notified of that decision today. The Commission has followed this investigation very closely from the beginning. Our view all along has been unchanging and very firm. We believe that China's measures are unfair. We believe they are unjustified. We believe they are inconsistent with the applicable international rules and are thus unfounded.
And some companies that made minimum price commitments will be spared from the higher tariff rate. The ruling follows an investigation into European brandy, most of it cognac from France, first launched last year. French cognac makers have complained they are collateral damage in a broader trade fight between Brussels and Beijing over import tariffs imposed on China. Those were for Chinese-made electric vehicles. A decision-making body for the French cognac industry says monthly cognac exports to China have already fallen by 70% due to the ongoing trade disputes.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For On the Clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching and happy Independence Day.